All right, here we go on a Thursday. Back in the saddle again. Cannot wait. Going to be an exciting night tonight. Welcome in, everybody, to the Gem City Sports Podcast here on the new Gem City Sports Network as we continue along with what's been, by the community's eyes and a lot of people's eyes, a really positive start to things. Welcome in, Isaac Petcash, Jonathan Williams, the duo here on the horn tonight. Nick Artman, Paul Adams, getting the night off. But happy to be here with you tonight and a lot of stuff to get into. Jonathan, it's crazy. We started this podcast network a few weeks ago, and we knew we'd be having a lot of content to discuss. But I don't know if we really expected as crazy of a start to the season, whether it's high school, college, or the NFL that we've gotten.
Yeah, high school has given us some game of the year candidates, as Paul likes to say early on, and then college, especially around here, has given us a couple nail biters and a couple of really unexpected outcomes to some of these games, man. Like, football is football, and football is back, man. It's crazy, and anybody can win on any given Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So it's been an interesting start to the year for sure.
It makes it fun. 2024 is a year that we will remember, certainly for this podcast network, but even more so in how crazy it's just been through the first 4 weeks. A lot to get into tonight. Wherever you're watching, welcome in, whether it be Facebook, we're live on X. Finally, got that situation figured out. Live on YouTube, live on Twitch. This, of course, our second of 3 episodes this week. We're live tonight and tomorrow. Going to get into a ton tonight. Jack Corey, Seneca head coach, who's 3-0 to start the season. He's joining us in about 15 minutes or so. We'll talk that, chat some high school football week 4 preview. Give you the results of our poll question, which is currently active for the next hour. We put it out a few hours ago, and that was what exactly is going to be the most competitive game of the week. We've got a couple of votes in from that, so we'll give you the answers to that. Plus, we'll make our predictions for the Steelers and the Browns game for week number 2. We'll update you on the Buffalo Bills while we're at it, too, because that game is happening in about 15 minutes' time. All right, but Jonathan, I want to start tonight because you and I were talking off air. We feel like college is the place to start tonight because in the last week, we have seen 2 wild, ridiculous, and crazy endings to local teams' games. I want to start with the Edinboro Fighting Scots because they deserve to be first. After losing to East Stroudsburg and looking particularly anemic on offense in week 1, they come out and beat a Division I foe in Robert Morris about an hour and a half down the road, 23-21. I was as stunned as I think you were, Jonathan, to see the results after what we saw from the Fighting Scots. And you and I both said, look, this is a team that needs to have to work on a lot of things and go back to the drawing board. Seemingly, at least defensively, they figured it out last week.
Yeah, man, I gotta give a shout out and a tip of the cap to Edinboro. We were a bit rough on Edinboro after their opener last week, and we were honest in our assessment that they didn't look good. They didn't look good really on any phase of football, and I guess they might have hurt us. Who knows? I don't want to take credit for that, but they came out against Robert Morris and especially defensively looked a lot better, holding a Division I FCS opponent to 21 points after giving up 24 to East Stroudsburg. It's like, I don't understand how you make that leap, but somehow they found a way to do it. Anytime you're a D2 school, you can go in on the road at a Division I opponent and win a close ball game, especially in the crazy fashion that they won off of a safety at the end of the game. It's always wonderful. It's always great to be in that moment and kind of know that you've kind of accomplished history as a program.
In case you missed how it went down, 21-21 was the score going into the fourth quarter. Edinboro punted on one of the early drives of the fourth quarter, and Reed Martin kicked an incredible punt that rolled all the way down to the 1-yard line. It was tallied at 74 yards. Reed Martin's a stud, by the way. Special teams, they matter. And so just an unbelievable punt by Reed. First play of the drive, strip sack, fumble out of the back of the end zone for a safety. Edinboro wins. I want to read you some of the stats because this to me is where Edinboro really makes their hay, right? We know that the offense has been a work in progress with Isaac Bernard and guys in the backfield here and there. But 12 first downs allowed defensively for Edinboro. Under 250 total yards allowed. 224 is what Robert Morris got in the game. And they only averaged 4.5 yards a play. In a Division I environment on the road, Jonathan, those are numbers that are almost unheard of. And to me, it's the sign of a team that's maturing. Not necessarily in terms of being able to go in, week out, and dominate like that, but understanding assignments. And we talk about that all the time, right? assignments are so important. You got to be disciplined when you play a D1 team as a D2 school.
Yeah, this Edinboro team looked like a team that took their loss on the chin, and they got in the lab and went to work. Like, they didn't come into Robert Morris scared. They didn't come in reeling from their first loss. No, they took that loss and got in the film room, went to practice, and they grinded. They literally worked all week long, and it showed on Saturday in the way that they played, especially on defense. Like, I'm scrolling through the stats right now, and literally 60 or 70% of the stats on Edinboro's side are bold. They outplayed Robert Morris in this game. The score might have been close. They might have won on a safety, but they might have won by 2 points. But, like, if you're looking at the numbers in this game, they outplayed Robert Morris in every phase of the game, including special teams, which I want to highlight for Edinboro, because as someone who has played against Edinboro twice and had to game plan against Edinboro twice, that has always been the one place where I've been told and where we've been told that you can get beat when you play against this team, special teams. That's been their strong suit. Reed Martin is incredible, former All-American, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
He's incredible as a punter, and their special teams has always been solid, and it proved to be a very pivotal factor in this game, taking advantage of a 70-yard punt. It's nearly unheard of, especially in D2 football, but he went on a big stage and did it and set his team up to win, and it wound up being one of the things that helped them edge out Robert Morris in this game. I'm just really impressed with this Edinboro team and the way that they bounced back from week one. If you're gonna take a loss in the home opener, debuting your new turf and everything like that, if you're gonna go out like that week one, the way to bounce back is to come back and beat a Division I opponent on the road.
My final thoughts
restores confidence.
Yeah, I totally agree. My final thoughts for Edinboro are this. I think in the PSAC specifically, Jonathan, you know this, you win the game in 3 ways. Control the time of possession, play great defense, limit turnovers. Turnovers have been the bugaboo for the Fighting Scots in the last 2 years under Jake Nolf. In this game, turnover battle 1-1. Each team had a pick. Edinboro didn't lose a fumble. Technically, they got another turnover on the strip sack fumble, which resulted into the safety. So they win the turnover battle, controlled the ball for 38 minutes. That's the thing that pops off the page to me, is that Edinboro, as much as we get on Isaac Bernard, he did what he needed to do in terms of keeping the line moving. 20-27, didn't have a lot of bad throws. He had the 1 pick, $161, 2 touchdowns. That is fine, especially with the way the Edinboro defense was able to play in the game, and even really against East Stroudsburg, hold the Warriors to, let's say, 17 points, because the 7 that they started with were off the turnover at the beginning of the game. So the recipe is there. The factor is there for Edinboro to be able to win games. I'm now curious for the Fighting Scots as we move through the season, because they've got tough games. They get Kutztown next week, specifically this Saturday, going to be a really tough game. We know Kutztown currently sitting 10th in the country in Division II. They're not going to be an easy out. And then we know the West, right? It's IUP, it's Slippery Rock, it's Cal. Edinboro's got to play all 3 of those teams. So we'll see, but kudos and props to Jake Nolf and the Fighting Scots for that Division I victory. It's not easy no matter who they play. And now Robert Morris has to go play another Erie County team next week. That's where we transition now, Jonathan, to Mercyhurst. How about the Lakers on the other end of what was a crazy, crazy ending to the game? Let me take you through and see if anybody on this podcast, comment, by the way, if you have any thoughts on what we're talking about here in the comment box, we can throw them on the air. I don't know if I've ever seen a team score a touchdown to go ahead, be up by 4, have a blocked extra point go the other way for 2. So now it's a 2-point game, and then give up a game-winning field goal as time expired. But that's how Mercyhurst lost the game to Howard in what would have been their first Division I victory against the Division I team. How do you break this down if you're Ryan Remedio squad? I mean, I don't want to say how do you recover from this, but this is a rough game to lose.
It's a rough game to lose because you were like, the game is in hand at that point. Like, it's simple snap, operation, kick, or like we talked about before we came on air. Okay, you're up by 4 after you scored a touchdown. If you think there's any inkling that kick can get blocked, just run your offense out there, take a knee, and kick the ball off up 4.
Or just go for 2, and if you don't get it, you don't get it.
You don't get it. Either way, you still make Howard have to score a touchdown to beat you. This was a Howard football team that went 6-6 last year, but like we were talking about before we came on, like, this was a good Howard football team last year. They lost by 10 to Eastern Michigan, 1 to Hampton, They lost by 3 to Big Ten Northwestern. Like, this is a good Howard football team, and Mercyhurst was right there, game in hand. As a Golden Knight, I rarely ever feel bad for the Lakers. But man, looking at the score to this one and then seeing how it played out, like, I kind of felt a little bad. It's like, you're right there, and you want to see an Erie County team kind of pull that one off, because that would have been a huge win for your first Division I win to kind of start off this new era for the program. It would have been a huge one, but positives you can take away from it is that you went toe-to-toe with an FCS opponent, and you went toe-to-toe to the last second, literally, with an FCS opponent. You can play at this level. You just showed yourselves you can play at this level. Now going in the NEC play, you got to take that with you. You got to take that same game plan. You got to take that same confidence level with you that, okay, yeah, we were D2 last year. We're here now. We're Division I school. We're a Division I team, and we can compete with these guys. And they showed that against Howard. They just got to take it in a conference play.
Let me make a bold statement that's not really a bold statement. They play like this weekend against Robert Morris, they're going to win the game. They're going to win the game. I mean, especially the way Robert Morris looked last week. To me, and I know we're going to say his name a lot more during this podcast, and we already have, Adam Urania is the guy. Mercyhurst has found their quarterback, if they didn't know that already last year. This dude is electric. Yeah. 23-34, 225, 2 touchdowns. He had 2 passes of over 25 yards. Honestly, you could make the argument if the offensive line played even a tad bit better, he probably would have had a 3rd touchdown, was sacked 4 times. That was a big part of the dividend for Mercyhurst, is they just couldn't protect Urania really well. The running game was relatively balanced. And again, the offense, and this is the same story from last year, the offense has been figured out, I think. There were periods of time last year where Urania would struggle and there would be lapses, but for the most part, it's been the defense that's been the concern early on for this Mercyhurst team. But heck, if they can get it figured out, even defensively, and be just a tad bit better, I think that this team could win 4 or 5, maybe 6, who knows, if they can go on a run here. And keep in mind, they do have 2 home games coming up on September 28th and October 5th. So tough way for Mercyhurst to lose that game, but I think there are a lot of positives to take forth, because realistically, you lost the game on a fluke. And the other thing I think, too, for Mercyhurst is you won the 4th quarter. That did not happen much last season for Mercyhurst. They really struggled late in games to get the momentum going. Keep in mind, I mean, even last year, Jonathan, the Gannon game, right? They have a double-digit lead going into the 4th quarter. They struggle with keeping the lead. They ending up blowing that when Jaden Whitaker comes into play the second half. They outscored Howard 21-11 in the 4th. Realistically, should have been 21-5 if you take 21-6 if you take away the 5 points that were scored there. So, building blocks for Mercyhurst. A lot to look forward to for this Laker team, but still looking to have that consistency, specifically on the defensive side of the football. All right, we're going to get to Gannon in a little bit later in the show, because they got a big matchup coming up against East Stroudsburg. I'll be there for the call on WERG. But before we get to that, we want to bring in our live guests, because we have been talking about high school football. And of course, the one thing that we know is that teams are making big strides, and there are teams that are starting to separate themselves and teams that are starting to fall by the wayside. And there's one team that has come out of the gates beyond strong, and their offense has been dominant, and maybe it's the power of the beer. Jack Corey, Seneca football head coach, joining us on the program, my friend. It has been a heck of a season for you, man. Take me through what it's been like these first 3 weeks, because you told me at the beginning of camp you were pleasantly surprised with what you saw. And I didn't know whether to take that as, I think we've got a shot, or I think we can build something here. But clearly you figured something out here in the first 3 games.
Yeah, I think we have had some guys really prove themselves. We had some guys that we knew were very talented. We knew that we're going to be able to perform at some point at this level, but we didn't know that it was going to be this soon. So they've really kind of showed up and been able to execute our offense well. That was kind of one of the big things going into this season. Going into our 2023 season, we were playing a lot of younger kids. The execution wasn't there. The details weren't there. We kind of turned it on the end of last season, and we were hoping that would roll over into the upcoming season, the 2024 season. So And it's kind of showed. So our execution, in the backfield, our quarterback is doing a great job, Rylan Harwood, of reading it, and everything runs through him. And then really getting some huge plays from our freshman Zach Moats, who we knew was going to be a stud at some point, but we just didn't know it was going to be right now. He's lit it up and kind of been we forced our hand to put him in the game more. So.
It's so interesting, Jack, because when you had that run a couple of years ago, right, where you were led the backfield by Ryan Miller, you had those veterans on the back end, but you've talked so much about the youth, and we've seen multiple freshmen on this team be able to contribute. Were you surprised, and have you been surprised at how well those young guys have been able to perform early in the year, given the fact that you don't play in an easy class or an easy region?
Yeah. It's always a surprise if a freshman can contribute on a varsity level. So, again, like I said, we knew Zach was really athletically talented, but we weren't 100% sure that it was going to translate right away because of the details and because of the higher level of offense and things that we are doing. I think what really stands out to me, especially with Zach and other people like Donovan Hughesneck, who's played a lot as a freshman, they were very consistent in the summer. They were always around. Zach has been coming to summer workouts since he was in sixth grade, so he's been working out with our varsity team since he was a sixth grader, and he's been consistent with that. So physically, he was able to match up at the varsity level because he's prepared himself, and then making sure all those optional workouts in the summertime, making sure that you're there so you're learning and there's no learning curve when August comes.
Hey, Coach. First off, great start to the season. Congratulations on a great start to the season. I think it's the first time that you guys have started 3-0 since about 2017.
Correct.
So it's a tremendous start to the year. My question is, what was your message in the offseason to your guys? I feel like you guys were a little bit slept on coming off the 4-6 year. And then I know you were picked to lose your home or your opener this year. You were picked to lose to Sacred Town by about 26. Yeah. And I saw where you tweeted out that you the Michael Jordan meme. I took that personally. So what was the message to the guys this summer and going into fall camp and everything, knowing that people weren't really high on you coming into the season based off of last year?
Yeah, I think that we had a great senior class in 2022, and it showed that we missed them at the beginning of last year. And then losing our senior quarterback, I think that a lot of people thought that was our entire team in 2023. And Nolan Seabury was a huge part of Seneca football and a huge part of our success. I don't think they believed that we were going to be able to reload like we have. I think that being able to have Rylan sit behind Nolan and learn for 2 years, and then also get on the field and make some plays and have success playing defense as a sophomore and coming into a couple games to finish it out. Especially one that comes to mind is when we played Union City last year. It was a 6-0 game, and Nolan sprained his ankle and had to come out for the fourth quarter, and Rylan rushed for 89 yards in the fourth quarter and led us down to a game-sealing touchdown. So him having that experience, I think, went a long way in us having confidence going into this year. And you always love being the underdog because it's easy to self-motivate.
Coach, for those who don't know your story, you've been around this area quite some time. Of course, when you came to Edinboro as a freshman back in 2008 and just continued your way through the college ranks. It's interesting because a lot of guys get their experience from high school, and then they move up to college. You kind of started your way through the college ranks, and then you go from there to Erie High, then Mercyhurst Prep, and now Seneca. Mm-hmm. How did that experience, whether it be a player or in some aspects a coach, help you from college to high school, and I guess a way that is not traditional of how you normally progress, if you will, through coaching?
Yeah, I think that it helped me because I don't believe that there's another high school program out there that's as detailed as we are. We run things like a Division I program. I learned a lot from Justin Lustig and from some assistants that I played under. But Justin Lustig, who is now the Penn State special teams coordinator, was our head coach in 2016, and pretty much all of our systems come from him. All of my processes come from him. The way we run practices, the way that we prepare comes from the things that he taught me in that season. And I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of two-way teams that can prepare that way.
All right, let's talk as we look forward to the rest of the season. I mean, I know you're only in week 4, and I know that you've got plenty of football left, but specifically about this Friday's matchup and tomorrow with Mercyhurst Prep. We know the rivalry that you and Coach Root have established in the last few years. This is a Laker team that lost a lot from last season, as I'm sure you know. Take me into the matchup, because it always seems when you two meet up, you throw the records out the window and something magical always seems to happen. What do you expect for tomorrow?
Yeah, I think we expect another fun one, another battle. I think the matchup is going to be determined up front. I think they have a really strong offensive and defensive line. That's a place where I think, are super detailed and we play super hard, but we don't have the size to match up. So we'll see if our speed and athleticism can counter that size that they have. And it's always fun because there's a little extra motivation, obviously, being a part of that staff. And like I said on the air, earlier this week, 51 weeks a year, they're friends, but this week they're the enemy. So it makes it a little bit more fun.
And again, the chance a couple of years back to coach the Save an Eye game with Coach Root, or I guess technically against Coach Root with the county and the Metro. You two knew each other well. I want to go back to what you said just a minute ago with the detail orientation of your program since you got in. What is the key nowadays to being able to build a small school program? Because we see all the time, right? Coaches come into big schools, big environments. They're able to kind of make it work right away. What's the necessity to be able to build that consistency and attention to detail specifically with a smaller program, especially around District 10?
I think building it from the ground up. So I got really lucky with that 2022 season, that senior class. And they really proved to everyone, I think, in the community that the blueprint's there, that if they follow the plan, and everybody says trust the process, but not everybody can really explain their process. And I think that we can. I think that we truly have a process, and we've started establishing it, in year 1 in the middle school program, helping, guide those coaches and get them on board in what we want to do. And then, we've trickled down in our 5th and 6th grade team, I think, is starting to run some of our stuff, and that's going to help a long way. And then, getting the whole community buy-in. We started a flag football program this year for kindergarten through 4th grade and had 90 kids participating. And, that's just kind of unheard of for our small community to have that much participation, and especially in football and in a school that's struggled for numbers for a long time.
All right, I got one for you, Coach. How easy is it on your defense? Because, I'm looking at these scores. You guys have been putting up a lot of points in your first 3 games. I think you're averaging about 35.7 points per game. How easy is it for your defense to go out there and play aggressive and just play free and not really scared to make a mistake when you have an offense that's going to go out there and put points on the board and give you some cushion?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things as coaches, it's been helpful that we haven't had to show a whole lot. We still have some things in our pocket. And our defense, I think, gets to play fast and play physical. And it's the same kids that are playing on offense, at this level. I think we have 8 guys that are two-way starters. So them having the confidence that they can go make up for it on the other side if they let up a big play, I think is huge. But those kids are just motivated to make plays and doing a great job on both sides.
All right, Coach, one more for you before we let you go and get ready for tomorrow. As you've developed this program, you've got a chance to learn a lot along the way, and whether it be yourself, but a former player as a coach. What's the one thing that you think, whether this is your middle part of your tenure at Seneca, your last more years going on, what do you think this job has helped you in terms of growing and developing as coach?
I think being detailed and making sure you're coaching the entire roster. It's easy to be at a big school and have talented players and be able to coach your 1s and 2s. But I barely have 2s here. Well, I got to make sure all 23 kids are ready to go and are locked in and understand, what we're trying to accomplish and understand all those details I keep talking about. Making sure that, our second string right tackle knows how to take his own step and can do it and effectively in a football game. And because he's, a snap away from having to play, and where we just don't have the liberty of having ones and twos that are ready to go all the time. So being able to coach the whole roster, I think, is something that I've really learned to do here at Seneca.
Coach, I tell you this every single time that I talk to you. I'm jealous of the beard. I don't know how you continue to grow it, but it just seems to get better and better every time I talk to you.
It doesn't grow up top anymore, so I got to keep the beard.
I think being part of the Bald Brotherhood isn't a bad thing. I have to get haircuts every other week, otherwise it becomes a problem. Hey, Coach, great stuff as always. Thanks again for being a part of this, and always great to talk to you, man. Best of luck tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, that's head coach Jack Corey of the Seneca Bobcats as they get ready to face Mercyhurst Prep coming up tomorrow. And Jonathan, it's just so interesting because we see in District 10, and you've seen as you've started to integrate yourself here, there's a difference between big school, small school, right? It maybe isn't as drastic as, say, a Pittsburgh or a Philadelphia, but we really, I think, are starting to see, specifically in this season in the first 3 weeks, these small schools, they're making a push, making a name for themselves, and I think Seneca's right at the top of that list.
And one of the things that Coach was talking about was community support.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from, and I know I'm not from Pennsylvania, but coming from a small school myself and coming from a small town myself, I can say firsthand, when your entire town and when your entire community can get behind a program and you can do some of the things that he was talking about, like starting from the middle school level, running high school stuff, starting even down into the youth levels where everyone's running the same offensive system, everybody's running the same plays. When you can build that kind of community support and really start it from the grassroots level and build it up into high school, you can build a powerhouse at that level. It's a tradition thing, it's a pride thing. You're developing kids from a very young age that want to grow up and play high school football for your school, represent your town, represent your community. And it's one of those things that when you find a small school and you find a small town that really takes it seriously as a town, it is special to see because those guys play harder. I am convinced those guys play harder than any big school you can find because they're representing where they're from. They're representing their next door neighbors. They're representing the guy that lives across the street from them that they've gone to elementary school with, and they've been in school since they were 4 years old together. So you're seeing those schools kind of make a push, and you're seeing a lot of these communities really get behind their schools because it makes a difference when you can volunteer hours and donate money towards the school and just show that level of support. It makes a big difference at that level.
And by the way, for Seneca, you look at their schedule moving forward. Jack Corey knows what he's doing and what he puts together with some of his scheduling. Mercyhurst Prep coming up tomorrow, and then 2 non-region games against Region 5 teams, Girard, Fairview, Eisenhower, a big game on October 4th, and the rest of the schedule potentially manageable. Northwestern, Iroquois, Maplewood. There is a real path to 8-2, maybe if they play well, 9-1 for this Seneca team. So you will be hearing a lot more about the Bobcats in Class 2A as we roll through the rest of the season. As we roll along here in our podcast, again, you're listening to the Gem City Sports Podcast on our new podcast network. Isaac Peckiash, Jonathan Williams. Already a half hour in. It certainly doesn't feel like that. We're rolling along. We just love talking sports, and we love that you're here with us. Tell a friend about us. We're live right now on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Twitch, wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in right now. Send us a comment. What do you think of Seneca's start to the season? How do you think the rest of the high school football season is going to go? And do you have a game in particular that you're keeping an eye on for week number 4? Speaking of games, a couple of score updates for you. A game that just went final. Fort LaBeouf over Northeast 28-23. I was there for the first quarter and a half. A lot closer of a game than what may have seemed to be on paper. McDowell leads Erie High 20-6. Jonathan, 28-23, LaBeouf gets it done. They had a 2-score lead late in the game. I'll tell you what, though. I know we say this a lot. We said this a lot last week because we nailed down on this. Region 5 is insanely unpredictable. You have a Northeast team that hadn't won a game all season, giving what could be the best team in Region 5, Fort LaBeouf, a run for their money. I don't think this parity is going to stop anytime soon in Region 5.
I don't believe it is either, and it's going to make for great entertainment. And it's going to make for great television anytime we're talking about it. But man, this region is going to be a bloodbath. Like, because any given week, any team can win. There's no like even your weakest links in the region aren't weak.
No,
you, as a coach, it's like, man, you really have to have your guys on point every week, because every week could be the week that you get popped. And as a player, you love this because every game means something. There's no games where you can take a play off. There's no games where you can take a down off. Every game is a big game, and you don't want anything more than that.
Other games to keep an eye on, by the way, as we're talking on Friday, for games tomorrow, of course, Mercyhurst Prep in Seneca. That will be a big one over at Saxon Stadium. That's at 7 o'clock. Cathedral Prep hosts Warren tomorrow night. Union City and Iroquois, what could be a sneaky good game between two teams trying to find their footing. Biggest game for me in Region 5, Fairview at Harbor Creek. How will the Huskies play after a great bounce-back win last week over Northeast, in which they completely destroyed the Great Picker defense, who looked better than average earlier tonight? Fairview, of course, coming in, they're still continuing to roll the train along the tracks, 1-0 in their region, 2-1 overall. So one of those two teams is going to be 2-0 with Fort LaBeouf at the top of Region 5 by the time the night is over tomorrow. Cambridge Springs will host Sagertown. Blue Devils lost a tough one to Greenville on Saturday, so they're sitting at 2-1 on the season. Conneaut Titusville. Josh Blood's team's been fairly sneaky this season. They sit at 2-1. Titusville maybe had the best performance of the week last week, destroyed Grove City 36-7. That'll be a big one as well. And then you look at some of the games on Saturday: Wilmington Kennedy Catholic, Slippery Rock, Grove City. The big one in Mercer County is Sharon Hickory, in what could likely be a matchup of the 3A title game if those two teams keep rolling. All right, I want to switch gears for a second, because as we know right now, Buffalo Bills currently in action against the Miami Dolphins, and it's already 7-0 Bills, by the way. Score update there, 7-zip. Allen finding James Cook for a 17-yard touchdown. So let's touch on this game for a second, Jonathan, because we're not going to make a call of the game because it's going on now. But I do find it interesting, and I was talking with Jeff Uvino of the Erie Times News, who's a Bills fan at the Fort LaBeouf game tonight. It always seems like there is just a rivalry that one team has another team's number. Buffalo's won 11 of 12 with Josh Allen at quarterback against the Dolphins. What about this rivalry, if you will, is so one-sided for Buffalo? Because the talent's the same, if not in Miami's favor.
The talent is the same. It's almost a lazy take, and it's one of those things that you don't really want to give too much stock to. Miami does not play well in the cold. They just don't. They historically, especially against the Bills, have not fared well when they've had to come to Buffalo and play, especially late in the season. Dealing with the weather, dealing with the snow, or just freezing temperatures is one of those things where they just haven't fared very well. Outside of weather, you start to wonder if it's a little bit psychological. Like, man, we can't beat these guys. We haven't beaten these guys consistently in a couple years, and it's like every time we play them, they get the upper hand on us. When you have a couple guys that have been with one franchise for a while, like, or even when you got new guys in the building, like, it still kind of lingers and kind of looms over a franchise and looms over the building, where it's like, okay, we got Buffalo this week. Like, we have to press a little bit because we haven't beaten them, or we haven't won the division over them in forever. It's one of those things where you start to wonder if it's a little bit psychological when it's been going on for as long as this rivalry has been one-sided.
By the way, that was a fourth down touchdown that Buffalo rolled the dice, won for, and ended up getting it. So there's a touchdown there. Miami, by the way, inside the red zone as it stands now. Tua Tagovailoa already with a pick in this game. So still a lot of game left to be played. And before we get into week 2, Jonathan, because this was something that I wanted to hit on, I want to get your thoughts on week 1 of the NFL season, right? I mean, limited preseason games. We see teams, a lot of them don't play their starters. I'm starting to wonder if week 1 really shouldn't be associated with real play at all. I just feel like we saw so much last week, whether it's the Browns not playing their best. I think there's some concern there, but from that, Cincinnati can't beat New England.
I was about to say, if you're a Bengals fan, you definitely don't want week 1 to count. Like,
the Saints looked like Super Bowl champs against the Panthers, who we thought we were going to be improved. Pittsburgh's defense plays well against the team that I had going 12-5 in Atlanta. Should we pump the brakes a little bit, even more so than we do to begin with on week 1?
You don't like part of me wants to say no. Like it's football, it's regular season football. Everybody's here to play. Your best guys are on the field. Your best guys are playing. But when you see the approach that a lot of these teams are now taking the preseason, they don't get as much of a ramp up period as they got in the past and in previous seasons, where you work a guy in for a drive or you build up to like a half of football towards the end of preseason. That has kind of gone away with the reduction in preseason games, and then with just the change in different teams' approaches to how often they play their guys. You almost do have to kind of look at week one and kind of take it with a grain of salt and say, okay, well, this is really the first game action for a lot of these teams, and for a lot of these teams' primary players. This is the first action that they've gotten outside of inter-squad scrimmages and training camp. So do you want to look at it and say regular season football is regular season football and everybody should be ready to go? Yes. But I feel like you would be kind of remiss to not note the difference in preseason and the difference in preparation and just those game-style reps and those game-like reps that guys aren't getting that they used to get in previous years.
I think the concern for me, specifically talking about the local and the regional teams that we touch on, and Pittsburgh and Cleveland are the two that I look at. This is such an offensive football league now, right? If you don't have a quarterback and if you don't have an offense that can move the football, the likelihood that you make the playoffs, much less compete for a Super Bowl, is next to none. And I see so many of these teams not only not playing their starters, but in Pittsburgh's case and in Cleveland's case, you're also running such a vanilla offense. You don't showcase what your offense can completely be. You don't showcase the whole arsenal. And I understand that to an extent. But not only for me is it a concern for the starters not getting reps, you also don't give the offensive coordinators, the head coaches, in this case, Arthur Smith, Kevin Stefanski, they don't have the ability to create and learn on the fly as you do during the regular season. I think what we're starting to see now is just so much concern. I think maybe timidness in the first week to really want to do anything creative. And I think that's, again, it's extension of the preseason. These coaches now are worried about, they don't want to do anything that, could be a problem later in the year. I don't know. I just think when you look at week one, I think you look at this and I say, I think there's room to be concerned for teams like Cleveland and be excited for teams like Pittsburgh, but I just don't know if it's enough of a sample size to say one way or another.
Yeah, like you look at a team like Pittsburgh, who was really heavy in play action and deservedly so. I mean, Justin Fields played really well in play action. He was 9-13 on play action passes last week. He threw for 81 yards on play action passes and had one of the lowest pressure ratings off of play actions. So it's something that, as an offensive coordinator, is kind of like, okay, you find what's working early and you kind of keep going back to the well, especially week one, because you don't want to open up your playbook too much. You don't want to show your hand for something that you might need later down the line when it's time to fight for playoff spots and seeding and positioning and stuff like that. So, yeah, the same way there's a learning curve with the players, and the same way the players kind of have to ramp up and get into the course of the season and get into the flow of things, it's the same way for coaches, especially offensive coordinators. When it's time to play call and it's time to scheme up things against these defenses, you got to give them a little bit of time to kind of get going, figure out, okay, what works for us? What do we do well? What do we not do well? Especially when you don't get those preseason reps with a lot of these guys. Week one is your time to figure out, okay, what are we good at? What can we do going forward? What should we probably shy away from going forward? What is the identity of our team going to be? So I feel like some of these teams were able to kind of figure that out a little bit week one, and it's going to be interesting to see how it translates to the rest of the season.
All right, so on the topic of figuring things out, I'm going to play the role of mom who has good news and bad news, will deliver the bad news first. In this case, the bad game for one of our regional teams that was last week. Let's talk Cleveland Browns, Jacksonville Jaguars. My mic doesn't even want me to talk about the Browns. It literally just fell in the middle of this. All right, we're back to business. Browns Jags, Sunday, 1 o'clock. If there's a team locally and really on this side of the Mississippi River that needs a win, it's Cleveland, right? Deshaun Watson in shambles. The defense didn't look great. Myles Garrett was bottled up. They get Jacksonville this week. Jonathan, prediction time. Who wins this game? What is the X factor for Cleveland to come out with a win, and how do you think it goes down? Give me a score.
I've got the Jags winning the game, first and foremost. if Cleveland wants to win this game, I feel like a broken record every time we talk about the Browns. It's Deshaun.
Yeah.
It's Deshaun. And with everything else going on outside of football, personal life, all of the different noise surrounding him, it still falls on his shoulders to lead this football team day in and day out until whatever happens with his situation. It's his job. He's QB1. And same way I was saying all offseason, this team goes as he goes. His offense goes as he goes. If he has a poor performance, like we saw last week, their offense has a poor performance as a whole. So it's going to be on him if they have a chance to win this game where he has to protect the football. They have to protect him better than they did last week. You can't let the man get sacked 4, 5, 6 times this week if you expect to win.
Yeah,
but it's going to be on him making throws. There have been numerous clips circulating on social media of just compilations of easy throws that were missed by Deshaun last week, and throws that you would expect a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL to make. Those throws have to be completions this week if they want to have a chance to win this game. Like it falls on his shoulders, quarterback play, their offensive line keeping him standing upright and him making just simple throws and just getting into a rhythm early.
I'm with you. I'm going to take the Jags as well in this game. I think it's a 26-20 sort of a final. I do think Cleveland stays in the game, but I'll go the opposite end of the spectrum because all the talks on the offense, Jonathan, you make a great point. Of course, it runs through Deshaun. I totally agree. I bang the gavel on the table for that day in, day out. But what concerns me is the injuries on the defensive side of the ball, whether it's Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, J.O.K., although he was full participation this week. Denzel Ward on the back end, full participation, but dealing with a shoulder injury. The concern I have for Cleveland is this on Sunday, is that if you couldn't stop C.D. Lamb as the only receiver that Dallas had that had a name to him, how on earth are you going to stop the likes of the rookie, Brian Thomas Jr., Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram at the tight end position? Like, I just don't know if there's enough depth there for Cleveland to be able to stop all the options that the Jaguars have. We know Trevor Lawrence is only going to get better. He had a decent game in game number 1 of the season, although it didn't result in a win for the Jags. But I just think that going on the road, Deshaun not playing well, the defense having to try to make up for the things the offense can't do. At some point, there's going to be a bit of a give and take. We see this all the time with Pittsburgh, right? The defense bails the offense out for the first 5-6 games of the year. Then at some point, you have a clunker, right? And the defense just doesn't show up. They're tired. They're gassed. They don't have the right game plan. I worry this is going to be the game for Cleveland. Hot weather, young rising star quarterback for Jacksonville, limited depth for the Browns, and we know that the injuries are starting to pile up. I didn't even mention the 2 tackles that could potentially be out again for the Browns coming up this week. So I'm just worried when it comes to their ability to keep up with the Jags, and I think it's a 26-20 game. It's going to be somewhere in that vicinity. I think the Browns are going to fall to 0-2, and we're going to be overreacting on Monday's show about how this team is in deep, deep trouble come week 3 when their schedule gets a little easier, but the offense may not be better. All right, let's talk Pittsburgh-Denver. I've got my thoughts. I'm going to save them because I want to hear you first, Jonathan. Pittsburgh 1-0, 6 field goals from Boswell, got them a week 1 win. How does this game against Denver go? Who do you see winning? What ends up happening, and what's the key?
I've got Pittsburgh solely because I was impressed by what I saw out of Justin Fields. Okay, yes. We don't score any offensive touchdowns. But we make a couple big plays and a couple clutch plays to get us into field goal position to score the points that we scored to win the game. So when I'm looking at Justin Fields' performance, highest rated passer out of the AFC North last week, really good passer rating, didn't make a ton of mistakes, protected the football pretty well. Like, to say that he was thrust into a starting spot after presumably losing it in training camp, or not winning it, I should say, and Russ being the guy that was named number 1, to say that he was thrust into it the week of the game because Russ had been hurt, he comes in and he manages the game well. Like, he did what you needed him to do to win the football game. And it was a performance that I think he can stack on. It's a performance that I think he can build off of. it's a good confidence boost performance. Like, yeah, you don't get in the end zone, but you played a pretty good football game, and your team got out of there with a win in a game that some people were going the other way with their picks. People were have been really high on Atlanta out of the NFC South, and maybe because Atlanta's the only team worth mentioning besides Tampa Bay out of that division, but people were really high on Atlanta coming into this game, and a lot of people picked Pittsburgh to lose. You go in, you win that game, you have a good performance, and I just think it's something that Justin Fields can build on and keep trending in the right direction. And it's interesting. We were talking about when would Justin Fields get an opportunity to play? When would Justin Fields get an opportunity to start? And it's literally fallen in his lap. And right now it's on him. Because Justin Fields goes out and lights it up against Denver. Are we wondering about Russ coming back? Now is it a quarterback battle when Russ is healthy? Like what are we walking into now? Like he has the opportunity to make this decision now a lot harder than it was originally going to be, and I feel like he's going to take advantage of that.
I'll tell you what, bold prediction right here. If Fields plays well in week 2, there's no competition. There's no battle. You have to go with Justin, especially with the way that. And I like your point because he was impressive, but to me, the more impressive thing in week 1 for Pittsburgh was Arthur Smith. Mm-hmm. No offensive touchdowns, but what they did is they moved the ball. And we talked on this on Monday's show was the efficiency at which they moved the football. They did not do anything that was going to put Justin in a position to fail, but they also didn't make it boring. And that's the one thing I think that Arthur Smith does so well. He takes a quarterback, he knows his talents, and he allows him to be as far off the leash as possible without letting him run wild. And I think we saw that for Pittsburgh last Sunday. The no turnovers were the most impressive thing to me. I said this on Monday's show. Look, the only thing that Justin Fields doesn't have going for him that Russ probably does is the turnover component. Fields is more turnover prone. He extends plays. He makes wild throws. He's an up and down quarterback. If he limits the turnovers, there is nothing that Russell Wilson contains in his arsenal that Justin Fields does not. And I maintain that status, and I think he should be the starting quarterback. My prediction is this for Sunday's game. Everything's going right for Pittsburgh in week 1, right? The offense is great. The defense we know has been making big plays. There's no reason that Pittsburgh should lose this game to a rookie quarterback. But every year, and I have been a Steeler fan and covering this team with John Leidick. John's been the main guy covering the team, but I've been around the team enough for the better part of my life. Every year there is a early season, early window road game that Pittsburgh is favored in that they do not win. It is as I've trademarked it, the Mike Tomlin trap game. I think this is that game. I think what you're going to see in this game is Pittsburgh dominate on paper. I think the offense is going to probably outgain Denver by 100 to 150 yards. I do think there's a couple of offensive touchdowns. But my big concern with this game in particular is going to be Justin Fields' ability to finish drives. This was not the case in week 1. And with Bo Nix back as a rookie in a home environment, I think Sean Payton's going to simplify the game plan. I think Pittsburgh's defense is going to play well, but give up a touchdown late. I've got Denver winning this game 20-17. I know that sounds crazy, but it's just every year without fail, there is a game that Pittsburgh plays with Mike Tomlin as head coach where they play down to the competition. I think you're going to see that on Sunday because, let's be honest, Jonathan, they still don't know what's going on at quarterback, and I'm just concerned that at some point in this game, there's going to be a turning of the tide, and for as good as we think Mike Tomlin is as a head coach, early in the year, he just seems to not be able to find it in these certain situations.
Yeah, I hear your sentiments about the Mike Tomlin trap game. I, myself, personally think that trap game is coming in about 2 more weeks. But
it could be both weeks, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm looking at that Colts matchup, and that's the one that I circled as like, that's one they could get caught. But you have to, if you're Mike Tomlin, you have to steady the ship. Your quarterback is who your quarterback is right now until I say he isn't. And that's what the message has to be. And I mean, I'm looking at quotes from Najee Harris saying it doesn't really matter who starts at quarterback for us. Like, we're going to play regardless. So you can't. It's one of those situations where they still don't have a definitive answer. But for right now, the guy that won you last week's game is the guy that's the starter this week. For all intents and purposes, Justin Fields is your quarterback until otherwise said, until otherwise stated, or until otherwise shown. Even if Justin Fields goes out there and has a bad game against Denver and you lose, Justin Fields is still your quarterback until Russ is named the starter, until Russ is healthy, until Russ is listed at the top of the depth chart. That's your guy you got to roll with. That's your guy you got to rock with. So as a team, everybody needs to be behind him. As a head coach, that needs to be your message. Everybody's behind the guy that is playing.
Can't wait for Sunday, man. Week 2 is going to show us a lot more than what week 1 did, and then we can finally start actually making these bold predictions, rash assumptions, and crazy overreactions. Before we get to our final thoughts, I do want to touch on Gannon really quickly because we didn't get to them before we got to Jack Corey. East Stroudsburg, the opponent, on the road at 6:05. I'm there calling the game, so I'm not going to say anything about it. Key for Gannon in this game, Jonathan, to get back on track and pick up a win.
Run the football for more than 36 yards. Gannon, you got some talented running backs. I've played alongside your talented running backs. You've got some guys that have some big playability and some versatile running backs, especially whenever you get Braxton Todd back from injury. You have some versatile running backs and a lot of different running styles in that room and an experienced and veteran offensive line. You cannot have another less than 40-yard performance on the ground and expect to win football games, especially not in the PSAC. You have to be able to run the football consistently. And you've got the guys to do it. And you've got a wide range of guys that you can get the ball to in different ways, whether it's tosses, whether it's running the ball up the middle, powers, whether it's screens, getting them involved in the passing game. You have some versatile guys back there. You just got to figure out a way to get them better involved because the passing game wasn't terrible last week against Northwood. It wasn't terrible. You threw for 289 yards in this game. It wasn't your passing game that was hurting you. It was your inability to run the football, which puts a lot of pressure on your young quarterback. It puts a lot of pressure on your offensive line when guys can pin their ears back and just all out blitz you because they know you have to throw it because you haven't been able to run the football. So that's my key. Run the football and just bring a different level of physicality than you brought last week. Like the first half of that football game that I saw last week, I felt like Gannon got bullied. And guys might not like to hear me say it, and guys might not agree with it. But from what I saw in my bird's eye view at the top of the stands, it just felt like Gannon was getting bullied. That physicality level has to be on a completely different level than it was last week if you want to have a shot against East Stroudsburg. This is a PSAC. I know I said PSAC this, PSAC that, but this is still a tough Division II conference. Every team is coming to play, and East Stroudsburg is not looking to lay down at home for sure. So you have to take it to them, and you got to punch them in the mouth first.
Going to be an interesting game, night game 2 for Gannon as we get ready for Saturday. Final thoughts, Jonathan, as we wrap up this Gem City Sports podcast. Going on an hour now. Great show. Hope you've enjoyed it. Comment, like, subscribe. Let us know how we did tonight. All right, we end the show with our tradition, as is always customary. Tomorrow night, we're back on the air, 10 o'clock, EerieNewsNow.com, CW, YouTube, X, Facebook, Twitch. It's in conjunction with the Critical Eye tomorrow night. Give us a bold prediction for just something, Jonathan, you think we're talking about by the end of the night tomorrow.
By the end of the night tomorrow, I will go. I think Buffalo might run away with this one.
Oh, you do?
I think Buffalo might run away with this one. I feel like we spent so much time talking about Buffalo's offense and can they figure it out and this, that, and the third. You get enough pressure on Tua. He's already thrown one interception in this game. Already, as far as I know, as far as the last update that I've gotten, he's already thrown one interception in this game. I feel like you force 2 more turnovers and move the ball the way that Josh Allen has shown he can move the ball, especially even with this receiver core that he has. He's shown that it hasn't really hindered him, at least not in week 1, and he can spread the ball around. Force 2 turnovers, move the ball the way you moved the ball last week, and I feel like we could be talking about a Buffalo win by about 3 scores.
It's really interesting because I was going to be on a similar wavelength as you with talking about the NFL, but I'll go with the high school route because I do think that at some point we're going to have to talk about something other than Region 5. So bear with me for a second while I say this. I know we don't get a chance to cover a lot of the Mercer County teams. So with respect to the Sharpsvilles and other teams in Mercer County who are in 2A of the world, my bold prediction we're talking about tomorrow night is that Seneca may just be the favorite to come out of Class 2A in District 10. They may just be. With the down year that Farrell's having coming into the season, coming into week 4, they're sitting at 0-3. They really haven't looked that impressive. Although, again, they had to play Hickory in week 1, a tough Fort LaBeouf team in week number 2. Ursuline's a powerhouse in the state of Ohio. So Farrell's always going to be there. But if Seneca can get past Mercyhurst Prep and they look at the rest of their schedule and games that they could potentially win, I know traditionally, again, Erie County teams don't beat Mercer County powerhouses, but could this be the year that the Seneca Bobcats are able to get over the hump and potentially edge out a team like a Farrell or a Sharpsville for a District 10 title? Again, I understand the power that those other two teams possess, but this might be Seneca's best chance, even when they had that great year in 2022 with the team that again, almost ran the entire table in Jack Corey's first season. So we'll see. Great show for tonight and a great show planned for tomorrow. Jonathan's going to join us on the road tomorrow. Paul Adamczak, we hope to have in studio as well. Hopefully some live call-ins as well. Can't wait, man. Time just keeps flying fast. We're almost halfway through September, Jonathan.
Yeah, man. I can't wait to keep up with Erie County football via Twitter for once instead of seeing some games in person. But no, it's gonna be a fun Friday as it always is.
All right, this has been the Gym City Sports Podcast for Jonathan Williams. I'm Isaac Petcash. We will see you all tomorrow at 10 o'clock on the CW and streaming live wherever you get your podcasts. Until then, have a wonderful rest of your Thursday night and make sure to make it a great Friday, everybody. Take care.